I've been so fortunate to have some incredible guests join me for interviews over the last several months, and this is really, really big time today. What an honor to have one of the best, if not the best, defensive coach in the history of the NFL, Steve Spagnuolo, join me today on Questions for Cancer Research. Steve, how are you?
Doing great, Chris. Listen, I appreciate you reaching out. It's been great to get to know you, the texts and the phone calls that we've had, but really happy to do it.
Yeah, no, great to see you. Really, so special to have you here. Your career is literally of historic proportions, including 7 Super Bowls overall with 4 victories and Super Bowl victories with 2 different franchises, one with the Giants and 3 with the Chiefs, all record-setting achievements for a coordinator. Just an amazing career. I know you've had the opportunity to enjoy a little downtime here in Florida, but I guess back to work soon with the draft coming up.
Yeah, it never ends, Chris. I mean, the cycle just continues, but that's what we all love about it. I mean, I'm unfortunate now. I get a little bit of time here. Coach Reed's great with understanding that we've been fortunate in these past 6 years to go a long ways, but we need our downtime too to refresh. So we're doing a little bit of that, and then we kick it back in on Monday.
I'm sure you guys must need some time to recharge, boy. It's long, successful seasons without a doubt. Steve, let's start out with probably one of the biggest changes since you've come into the league. With the increased focus on the passing game, what are the major changes that you've seen and implemented on the defensive side of the ball since you first joined the league about 25 years ago?
Yeah, so when I go back in my memory banks here, when I first got in the league in '99, Chris, they did already have the I'm going to the 5 yard chucking rule because I believe that when that changed years before, that opened up the pass game for everybody. Because at one time, I mean, you remember the Lester Hayeses and the Mel Blunts and those DBs that used to be, they'd be banging receivers all over the field. And I wouldn't have wanted to be a receiver then. But when that changed, I think the game started leaning toward passing. And then, when of course, we all saw as we watched football 25 years ago and then beyond, that, the guys got bigger and they got faster and the pads got bigger and the helmets changed and the face masks and the hitting was a little bit more vicious and you had to protect the players. So I think on defense, we understood that the safety of the players was utmost importance. But when they did do that, it made it tougher with regards to where you can hit somebody, how you can hit somebody, taking the head and neck area out of it, which is a good thing for football. But it did make it challenging. And listen, we're still big believers defensively where we're at, Chris, where we do want to put our hands on receivers, but it has to be, within that 5 yard area. And then it just becomes, after that, in my opinion, a basketball game. In other words, can't do that in basketball. So to me, that's been the biggest change, the chucking or the not chucking, how they officiate it, and the fact that because we need to put player safety first, I think that's always going to make it a little bit tougher on the defensive players. Now, I do think the coaches and players do a great job of adjusting to any new rule that they put in. I mean, in the 25 years I've been involved in the NFL, there seems to always be a defensive rule in there, that we're challenged, whether it's tackling or whether it's hitting the receiver that's in the air. And but I think it's good for football. It just makes it another challenge for the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I get you. Steve, with all things being equal, what's tougher for you to defend against? A prototypical stud-like stand-up pocket passer who'll get rid of the ball quickly, or more of a dual threat run pass type of QB?
Yeah, it's a great question, Chris. Listen, if you have an elite pocket passer, that's really hard. You have an elite athlete that's really hard. But I think it's more challenging when the quarterback also can beat you with his feet. Now, having said that, when the Tom Brady's and the Peyton Mannings were standing back there and picking you apart because they knew when to get rid of the ball, they knew how to turn a protection, they can become challenging too. But I do think the added threat of somebody beating, and these guys do a really good job of it. There's a bunch in the league now. They feel they got great pocket presence. They know right where the opening is. If there's nothing open downfield, they're gone. And it's really challenging on, you got to decide, Chris, in that instance that we're talking about with the athletic quarterback, you can decide how much man you want to play because when your backs are turned to that quarterback and the four pass rushers don't get him, that's a long run. But so to me, those guys I think are a little bit more challenging. I believe there's more of them in this league than the other guy now.
Yeah, and you know what's pretty amazing about all that is, with a quarterback, you're so worried about injury, and now you're telling your quarterback here, take the ball and run through those guys, But
Yeah.
it is amazing. I don't know if it's just that they're in a more defensive position to take a hit, and it's not really blind hits, but it is pretty amazing that these guys, will run the ball and they'll hang in there. They're pretty durable.
Yeah. But these athletes, most of them, Chris, these athletic quarterbacks are so good at making people miss, number one. And number two, I think most of them have gotten a lot smarter about, when it's time to go down, when it's time to run out of bounds. I mean, they're all using that. These big guys, these big quarterbacks use that stiff arm. We got 5'10" DBs trying to tackle them. You put that long, it'd be like, but you're a big, tall guy, Chris. So when you were younger and you were picking on little kids, you put your hand on their head and they go like this, and they
Steve, I never did that.
no, you wouldn't do that to anybody. But these quarterbacks are so big and so strong. They can use a stiff arm. They can slide. They can get out of bounds. I think they've gotten really smart at protecting themselves because they realize, if they're hurt and they're on the bench, that's not good for their team.
Yeah, you hit on the head. That stiff arm is amazing. I think if you brought somebody in and had them watch a football game and they saw a quarterback doing that stiff arm thing, they'd probably say, "Oh, that's illegal. You can't do that," right? I mean, because it really is an amazing tool to keep people at bay.
Yeah, there's some of the guys in this league have really mastered it, in my opinion, and they time it up. Now there is a rule in the game, Chris, because I've gone through this before as a defensive coach, that forcible contact to the head and neck area is supposed to be called. It doesn't always get called because it's a judgmental thing, but there are some that probably, go over the edge on that. It's a hard thing to officiate, and it doesn't always get called. From a defensive point of view, when a quarterback does it to one of our guys, I'm hoping it's called, but it doesn't always happen. But again, getting back to the quarterbacks, I just think they do a really good job of not putting them in harm's danger, with all the options they have to it.
Right, right. Steve, it was a really interesting year this year in terms of running backs in the league. A year ago, many within the NFL were pretty down on the value of NFL running backs. Teams were not willing to pay up amidst questions of durability. We saw the Giants painfully pass on Saquon Barkley somewhat in real time, courtesy of HBO's Hard Knocks. As you well know, Saquon had an incredible year with the Eagles and was within 101 yards of Eric Dickerson's single-season rushing record, and a total class move, made the decision not to play in the season finale against the Giants to guard against injury. That was very admirable. And we also saw Derrick Henry have a huge year for the Ravens. Steve, is it safe to say that the sentiment had become too negative with regard to running backs? And do you think the NFL will continue to produce superstar running backs going forward? Maybe not quite as many with the increased focus on the passing game.
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer the last one first, Chris. I do think there will be a surge. I believe most sports, and I know in the game of football, things go in cycles. So we've had this cycle of all the pass game. We talked a little bit about the rule changes that kind of helped that a little bit, but inevitably, things come back around, and I think running the football has done that. Quite honestly, from a defensive standpoint, Chris, in all of these 25, 26 years I've been involved in the league, from a defensive standpoint, I mean, to us, it never mattered prior to the game we were playing how many times they ran the ball or didn't run it. We still felt like if you didn't stop the run, then it becomes it would be a two-dimensional game. They can run it, they can throw it. And, when Peyton Manning was, and he gets to, he threw up a lot of numbers throwing the football, but he also knew when to call a running play, when everybody was defending the pass. And so I think that we always, from a defensive standpoint, begin by saying, how are we going to stop the run game? What are they really good at? And teams now, and you've picked out the two of the best ones in the league this past year, teams now have figured out controlling the football, having a good back there, makes the quarterback even better, in my opinion. Because listen, from my standpoint, Chris, when you're standing there trying to decide what to call on 2nd and 7, and they can get to 3rd and 2 by running it or throwing it and it makes it a little bit more challenging. So these teams, I think you'll see teams tilt that way a little bit. I mean, the question, and this is not a good one for me, it's a better one for the cap people, the GMs, but you just got to decide where you're putting your resources, right? Everybody has to have a quarterback. Everybody needs offensive tackles, cover corners, and pass rushes. And then, okay, so what's left over, and that's where you get into the debate about paying running backs, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it is funny because I think the mentality had gotten really negative last year, right? I mean, we just kept seeing that people did not want to pay up for these running backs, and
Yeah.
they're just going to last for so long, and these guys are really more interchangeable. You can switch guys in and out of the system, but
Yeah.
I think those two guys opened a lot of people's eyes last year.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of these college running backs were happy to see both of them do that this year, right?
Yeah, definitely. They're making a few dollars off those
Yeah.
seasons for sure. Um, Steve, I mentioned earlier that you've been to 7 Super Bowls with 4 victories. I'm wondering what it's like preparing for a Super Bowl. You're a pro at it now. You've got an extra week of preparation, and I wonder if it's a bit of a chess match to try and identify what the opposing team might do that is contrary to its previous tendencies. Is that a significant part of the preparation, or do you mostly focus on what's been successful for your opponent during the course of the season?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, the first thing that you learn when you have the 2 weeks to prepare is you can't overdo it. Here's what I mean by that. We're all built as coaches to look at anything and everything right up until the last minute. I mean, when you were in college, Chris, I don't know if you were one of these guys, but I was the ultimate procrastinator. So if I had a test on a Friday, I might study a little bit before, but I was cramming on Thursday. And we do the same thing in coaching. When you have a 1 week to prepare, you're trying to get as much as you can done early in the week, but you're always tinkering at the end. With the Super Bowl, when you have that much time, you can fall into the trap of finding another thing that you want to do, and then you've got to play the balance of what's too much. The players can only, listen, you want them to be free to play, right? You can't fill them too much in their brains and then it ties up their feet, so to speak. So to me, that's always the first challenge because I'm a tinkerer, I'm a perfectionist, I'm trying to get it right. And when you have 2 weeks to do it, you don't want to be walking in on the day before the game saying, hey, I got let's put something else in. That's the first challenge. The other thing that you were asking about, what do you focus on? I do think in our league, we all take the first month of the season to figure out what we have as players, what we're going to be. And then you get into the next part of the regular season, the other 3 quarters of it, and you kind of, when you find a groove, by the time these playoff teams, in my opinion, get in the playoffs, they've kind of found a groove. And I think they pretty much stick to what they've been doing and what got them there. I believe that. And we would try to do the same thing. So we probably focus more on what they've done in the last quarter of the season through the playoffs. Now, when you start getting specific, Chris, like situational football, right? So every short yardage play is looked at, every goal line play is looked at, third down, that's when you expand your games. But typical first and second down are what we call early down calls. I think they tend to get in the groove through the playoffs, and I think they would stick with that. I mean, I quite honestly, Chris, what I do is I try to have conversations with offensive coaches in the offseason and ask them that same question, like our own offensive coaches. Hey, what would you guys do? And that helps us a little bit defensively.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, as you were kind of alluding, you got that extra week, but it's kind of strange because, I guess at whatever point you guys travel to the host city, right? I mean, now you're just filled with distractions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
do you try and get as much done as possible with the players before you guys travel to the location?
Yeah, I think Coach Reed's got this down now, experienced enough to have done it multiple years here. So I like the way Andy structures the schedule. When the game ends on Sunday, the conference championship game, we give the players 2 days off, which gives the coaches 48 hours to get a game plan together. And that's an extra 24 hours. Normally it's but it gives us a good, and we might even go through until Wednesday. I don't think I think we got the players on Thursday, Friday, Saturday of that week, which would have been a typical Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We get the whole game plan done by the time we get on that plane on the Sunday prior to the Super Bowl. And when we get out there, it's really just a review. But that's that's the time, Chris, when as for me, we got to be careful tinkering, right? Because you put it all in. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to handle this situation. And then you watch one more game of film on a Monday night before the Super Bowl and go, what if they run that play? You know, and then do I go in tomorrow morning on a Tuesday for a light practice and put in a different call, or do I say, no, you know what, let's leave it alone? And that's kind of what I was talking about. But we would get, Andy's a big believer in get the whole game plan in before we leave, and then let's just oil it up. Because to your point, Chris, the players, like we get in the hotel and we get behind those walls, and as coaches, the distractions are limited. Families come in on Thursday and Friday, but for the players, they're pulled all over the place. So they've got to have a pretty good feel of what we're going to do before we get on that plane.
Right, right. No, you guys are absolute pros at this point. In February of 2008, the Giants defeated the Patriots 17-14 in Super Bowl 42. You know, by the way, I have a really hard time with these Roman numerals trying to figure this out. You've got to be an absolute pro at it by now after seven.
Well, I will tell you this, you remember the ones you win. I forget all the Roman numerals on the ones that we didn't.
Yeah, I just don't quite have these down. It takes me a little bit, but the game will probably be most remembered by the late fourth quarter completed pass from Eli Manning to the top of David Tyree's helmet after an incredible sack-defying scramble by Eli. The Giants went on to score the game-winning touchdown on that drive, but of equal importance, the Patriots were on the verge of joining the 1972 Dolphins team in immortality as the only unbeaten Super Bowl winning teams in the history of the NFL. The Patriots went into the game averaging a league best 36 points a game. Tom Brady had only been sacked 21 times over the 16-game regular season. You guys sacked him 5 times in that game. Steve, definitely one of the all-time great defensive game displays. How did you guys manage to get to Brady and shut down their high-powered offense?
Yeah, we had some highly motivated defensive linemen and cover people on the back end. Listen, that was it's a great memory. I appreciate you bringing it back up, Chris, because it's been a while now. That was Super Bowl 42 with a wonderful group of guys, and a real terrific game played by both teams. And you know, you were rattling off those stats about Tom Brady and their offense, and I remember going into the game saying, if we could just keep them under 30 points. I felt like if we keep them under 30, that would be a good defensive effort, and it might give our team a chance to win the game. But the way the guys stepped up, the Michael Strahans, the OCU Manuras, the Antonio Pierce, who was running the show then, he was my quarterback. You know, I mean, you needed a guy like that. Sam Madison and Corey Webster, some guys in the back end that were covering. I just thought it was one of those examples, Chris, of because we were not blessed with a bunch of Pro Bowl players. I'm not sure on that defense. I think OCU Manura might have made the Pro Bowl that year, but we did have a bunch of guys that played like that. And you know, you're a basketball, you know basketball, Chris. You remember Red Auerbach's statement was always, "Don't give me the 5 best players. Give me the 5 players that play together the best."
Yeah.
And I just thought that's what we had. Now it wasn't just 11 because we were substituting people in, but we just had guys that were really determined. I remember Michael Strahan talking about he had heard, now I don't, maybe he made it up, I think it was true, but he had heard that there were already jerseys made up that had 19-0 on it, you know, New England Patriots Super Bowl. Yeah, so you know, for guys with a lot of pride, right?
Yeah.
They were fired up, and that front that day did a terrific job. It seemed like, yeah, it was one of those games, Chris, where it felt like whatever we called, the guys executed really well, and it happened to work. It doesn't always happen that way. And when you bring up the play with David Tyree, which was, we don't get to this conversation we're having unless we have that play. But I was quite all I'm worried about is the next series when Tom gets the ball, right? And I think what people forget is that there was still, all they needed was a field goal to tie. And we've all seen Tom Brady take his team from the -20 into field goal range. And I think they had just under a minute. We had 4 more plays to go. I mean, everybody thinks the game's over. I'm like, this ain't over. They got Randy Moss and they got Tom Brady, but we had a young tackle, Jay Alford, make a big play. I think we blitzed him on the very first down, got the ball out quick, and Jay Alford made a sack, and then he chucked 2 deep ones, Chris. I don't know if you remember those 2 plays, but Tom threw it 70-something yards, and you got Randy Moss running down there, and I'm like, I'm just praying, and luckily they both went incomplete, but great memory, great memory.
Yeah, just an amazing game. It's funny. I kind of remembered that at the end. I think there are a lot of Giants fans thinking like, all right, let's just see if we can hold them to 3 and take this into overtime, right? I mean, with
Yeah, I mean, that's how powerful they were.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just an amazing game. Steve, you joined the Chiefs in January of 2019, and you were reunited with your longtime good friend Andy Reid. You played a huge role in the Chiefs' dynasty run. Since 2019, the Chiefs have played 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls and have won 3 of them. How special has this been, and do any of those 3 wins have extra meaning for you?
Uh, they're all they're all special, Chris. I mean, that's the special part of any of this, and you've been involved in athletics yourself, but it is about the relationships, right? And so when you win one of these, and it's not just the players, it's their extended families, and then our families as coaches, and just the way it all comes together, and you're able to share in something that takes a lot of effort over a long period of time, and the sense of accomplishment. What I really think is really neat, Chris, when you are blessed enough to win one, is all the excitement that goes with the shortly after that in the locker room. I love the locker room part of it. And then there's obviously the families and the gathering afterwards. But I love the conversations 2, 3, 4 days down the road when maybe someone's brother or sister or the wife or says, we won the Super Bowl. And like they say we, because they feel a part of it and should, because the player or the coach, they've lived it all season long, the grind, the ups and downs. And that I think that's the neatest thing about winning the Super Bowl is the extended families, how they feel about being a part of it.
Well, I mean, it literally, does take a village, right? Because you think about the families and everything they're doing, to help the players get ready. And,
Yes,
you need every one of those guys, at their best level to contribute. So you're right. I mean, they all play a huge role in that.
that's special.
It would be really so special what you guys have done, Steve. So very few in the world of sports will ever be fortunate enough to be a part of such greatness. Can you try to explain the feeling of excellence which must permeate through the entire organization in the midst of such a historic run? I mean, it's just amazing what you guys are doing.
Yeah, and people always ask, what is it? I mean, like any business, and football is no different than any other business around this world in this country. It all begins with leadership, right? It rises and falls on people and leadership, and from top to bottom. So from ownership, through Coach Reed, Andy's the rock. Brett Veach, all the coaches. I think the assistant coaches get overlooked too much, in my opinion, because they're a big, big piece of it, and then certainly the players and everybody in the building. And I just think that, and I was not there when Coach Reed got there in 2012 or 2013. I can't remember when his first year was, but I was with them when we began the process in Philadelphia in 1999, when we went on that stretch from 2001 to '04, where we went to 4 straight NFC championship games. Now we lost the first 3 and then won the fourth one and went to the Super Bowl in Jacksonville. Where I'm going with it, Chris, is there's a common denominator here, and it's Andy Reid. I mean, he knew how to put it together. He had a plan. He was able to explain that plan and have a bunch of people jump in. And when everybody's on board and nobody cares who gets the credit, that's what you get. And then add to that, here we are in Kansas City now, add to that, and I believe this in any team sport, veteran leadership or players that know how to lead, that are unselfish. The Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce's, the guys on defense we have, from Nick Bolton to Chris Jones to, Justin Reed. I could rattle off a bunch of them, but these guys, I talked about the Giants team that, you know, 11 guys that play together well. We've got the same thing on both sides of the ball here in Kansas City, and that's a pretty important piece of it.
Yeah, no, it's just been an incredible run. Steve, let me bring up something that's in the news recently, and it is pretty interesting. I think if I go back to the Super Bowl, I think the Eagles' first score may have been on a tush push.
Yeah.
And looks
I
like that's
remember it well. I remember it well.
sorry to bring
Yeah.
up these
No.
memories here. Yeah.
No, I tell you why I remember it, Chris, is because
Yeah.
I did not like my call to play before. They got down to the 1 yard line on I think on a penalty. Oh no, a catch. And I just wish I could have that call back because I didn't. We were trying not to get in those situations.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, it looks like the tush push, at least for now, is still alive. I guess the vote has been postponed on that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it, being in the league or out of the league? And is there any way to defend against it?
That's difficult. It really is. You got to take some chances. I mean, listen, the league will figure out whether we should keep it or not keep it. I mean, I don't, you shouldn't penalize somebody that's found a way to do something really good, but then the safety thing and, all the conversation that's going on, they'll figure it out. And as a coach, quite honestly, my opinion doesn't matter one way or the other. What I'm a firm believer in is whatever the rules are, it's going to be the same for everybody, right? All right. So if the tush push is still in, let's figure out how to stop it from a defensive standpoint, and offenses, if they want to use it, figure out how to do it really effectively. And if they take it out, it's not going to take away the quarterback sneak. So you're still going to have to defend that. But I think they'll figure it out. And I mean, this happens a lot, right? Something happens in the game of the football, whether it's safety issue or just look like the kickoff. Try to get more kickoffs. That the league does a good job. They got some pretty intelligent guys that know football, but they'll figure out which way to go with it.
Right, right. I mean, as you alluded to before, and I didn't realize this till I started looking into the stats before our interview. I mean, for the year, Philadelphia was 39 of 48 converting for either a first down or a touchdown. Of the 9 times that they failed, they followed up on the next play with a tush push, and they got it eight out of the 9. So they only failed on it really once, and I think they had a fumble earlier in the year. So I mean, obviously, very, very effective for those guys.
No, they've mastered it, and so okay, what did we do when it started to come out? I talked to rugby people because it looks like, to me, it looks like a rugby play, and there was some interesting. I remember one rugby coach said, "Well, the only way to defend it, or the best way, is to have your defensive players lock arms, like because there's force by them. They got people pushing behind, right? So well, you've got to have the same amount of force against it. But football's different than rugby. I mean, if you have 4 guys locking arms and I'm the quarterback and I see that, I'm not run. I just hand the ball outside, and guys locking arms now can't make plays on an outside run play. So you really couldn't do that because they've expanded. It's not just the tush push. They've got 3 or 4 things off of it that you have to be concerned about. And to their credit, they've mastered that part of football. I always say, let's not let them get in 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1.
I do love that you reached out to some rugby coaches. That's awesome. I love it. I mean, it very much does look like rugby, right?
No question.
Yeah. Steve, given the importance of the quarterback position, the league has made some changes over the years, which you spoke about earlier, to protect them from injury. During the course of the year, I feel like we see some very questionable, or at least inconsistent, roughing the passer penalties. As a coordinator that favors the blitz, this is obviously very important to you and your players. Can you explain the intricacies of the rule and tell us what adjustments you've had to make with your players in their approach to making contact with quarterbacks?
Yeah, it all comes back, and it's the right thing for the league to do to protect, the most important player on the field. So we get that. And so what had been implemented years ago was what we call the strike zone, which is from the waist, right up to the chest on a quarterback. And as a defensive player, that's what you're always aiming for, that strike zone. So you got to stay away from the head and neck, and then they also have protected the quarterback's legs until he makes himself a runner, and then that rule goes away. So, the rules have been in place long enough now, where I think our players have adjusted. The toughest one, Chris, was a couple, 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, when they started calling penalties for guys that were falling on the quarterbacks. That's a tough one. I mean, these guys are big and fast, and you get the strike zone, which you're not hitting them in the head, you're not hitting their legs, and then you somehow fall on top of them, and that's weight on the quarterback, and then that gets flagged. That's a hard one. Now, I will say guys have figured out how to stay away from that too. They may put their arms out, they try not to get weight on the quarterback. I mean, the whole goal is to protect, the valuable player. And we get that. And yet, I will say that, and you mentioned we do like to blitz, and we like to bring linebackers and DBs. And I see it all the time, that last instant before, do I hit them or not hit them? And I see guys pull up when I don't think they have to, but they're concerned about a penalty, B, a fine, so it's in their head. And sometimes you got to dance around that as a coach, because the game is a physical game. And if you're going to win defensively, you got to play physical.
So what is the official rule? So if you've got a DB coming in on a blitz and the quarterback's about to throw the ball, and let's say he releases the ball, a moment before contact is made, is that technically a penalty, or is that still judgment?
It's a judgment thing, but he gets a step. Now he can't. I'm talking about the player. If it's one step and he hits him and the ball is gone, I think we're good. But if he's taken 2 steps after the ball is released and he's hitting them, I believe that's when they call it. And it is subjective, but he is allowed that. There's a brief instance there, right, when the ball's gone, and if it's within 1 step. And I hope I'm saying that right, Chris, because I know if the ball's out and we take 2 steps and hit him, that's a late hit. Somewhere in that 1 step, 1.5 steps. So so it's not only the release of the ball, but it's also where you can hit them.
Right.
I think that the officials have gotten better at officiating that. I remember the one year, I believe it when they first put the penalty in for weight on top of the quarterback. There was some that were really, I thought they were overdoing it. But I think it leveled out, and I think everybody figured out how to coach it. Players figured out how to play the game within the rules, and I think the officials figured out when to call and when not to call it.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see it in basketball, right? Where these guys might get hit and they do the flop, and I do think the quarterbacks, right? I mean, we've seen some calls where you might have seen a push at the end and the quarterback goes down, and sure enough, the flag comes in.
Well, Chris, in basketball, is there a flop penalty?
I think there is now.
I thought there was too, but I don't know.
I think you can get called for a technical now if it's that bad. So
that's what we need. That's what we need next for the quarterbacks.
No, but technical foul, send them out for an extra point.
Yeah,
right?
I'm for it. I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
I love it. I love it. Steve, wide receivers seem to be getting taller, more athletic, and definitely getting paid more. It seems like we see more of the taller receivers operating outside, where teams can look to exploit the height advantage in one-on-one coverage. As a countermeasure, are we seeing, or do you think we will see, taller defensive backs in the game?
Well, one thing we always look at, Chris, it's a really, really neat, interesting question, because you're right about the trend in these, and they're tough to defend when not only are they tall, but they got a vertical jump, and we talk about their catch radius, where they can catch it everywhere. To counter it, yeah, we'd like to match that size, but there's not many of those guys. But what we always talk about is he's got to have our guys, because we're a press team, Chris, those big tall guys, if we can get our hands on them at the line of scrimmage, we got a better chance of defending that. But vertical jump, I'm always looking at arm length for DBs. So even though he might be a 5'11" guy, I mean, if he's 32, 33-inch arms, that helps in those situations. And so the arm length is really big to us when Brett Veach and his crew and defensive coaches evaluate players at all positions, D-line, linebackers, and DBs. But these, I think some of these skill guys, these wide receivers probably could be great NBA guards or something. I mean, they're just so athletic, and their hand-eye coordination. And the quarterbacks have gotten so good at where they put the football. Like, I think the toughest play in football to defend is what we call the back shoulder fade. It looks like the receiver's running a go route, a 9 route, and then he the ball's thrown behind him, and the DB, unless he gets his head around, and what it usually ends up happening is it's tough to make that play as a DB. And ultimately, the receiver either catches it or the DB, if he turns into him, ends up in a penalty. And that's what gets really hard. And sometimes I know these offenses in certain situations throw it hoping for a penalty.
Right.
And sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. But the size of these guys and the athletic ability is making it tougher and tougher. And the good teams are trying to find those wideouts to get on their team so that they can have that kind of that mini advantage.
Yeah, it's fine. I think within the last year or so, the Wall Street Journal did an article, and they were kind of talking about, the changing the NFL to the passing game. And they were, citing some examples where, if you went to football camps now, years ago, there just weren't that many kids that wanted to be wide receivers. And say now all of a sudden you go and look at these football camps of these kids in high school,
Yeah.
the amount of people that are showing up the wide receiver is probably about as big as crew as you see. So it's really changed a lot.
Well, we're on to something here a little bit. I mean, hey, listen, everybody wants to make a living, so you look for the best possibility. But because of the rules you and I had talked about earlier, I got to believe 40 years ago, if I was a skilled athlete and I watched a game of football and watched some of these guys getting hit over the middle like they used to, right? And some of those guys probably said, I don't know if I want to be getting hit. Maybe I'd rather hit them or, play a different position. So, and maybe that's kind of opened it up for some guys that look at it and say, hey, this is okay. I can do this.
Yeah, there were a lot of moms that said, no, you're not playing wide receiver. That's
Good
for
point.
sure. Yeah,
Good point. Good point.
yeah. Steve, this is interesting. I know you spoke with some teams in January about head coaching positions. One of the problems is that you're somewhat a victim of your success, right? Most teams
Yeah.
want to coach in place quickly, and you're coaching Super Bowls into February. That doesn't make it too easy. At age 65 is another head coaching opportunity, something that is important to you, prior to the end of your career.
Well, listen, first of all, I was really fortunate and blessed to talk to 3 teams. I always enjoyed that process. And listen, I get it. I would not want to substitute being involved in those games and getting to the Super Bowl because it's all about that. Doesn't matter whether you're a player, a coach, a head coach, or whatever. It's about winning games and winning Super Bowls. So my mind is always on that. It's always kind of a challenge to I believe in the job you're doing. That's what you should be focused on. So when you get involved in these while you're still in the playoffs, it's kind of tough. It's a challenge, but I did enjoy the process. I feel very fortunate to have had 3 opportunities to talk to teams. Whether it happens again or not, who knows? I'm okay. What I do know is I'm blessed to have the job I have. I think the pride in all of us, right? You're a competitor, I'm a competitor. We'd all like to be able to reach the pinnacle of our profession. And I did do it one time before. It didn't finish the way I wanted. I felt we did some really good things, but ultimately it ended. And if the right opportunity, Chris, is there, then we would try to roll with it. But I'm a very content, happy man and blessed to have the job I have.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I would think it would have to be a pretty good situation. Given where you are, what you're doing at this point in your career, right? I would think some things would probably have to align pretty well for you to step into it. But listen, I wouldn't personally, I wouldn't be surprised if it happens, but we'll see.
Yeah, appreciate it. We got to get you to own a team. That's what we got to do.
I'm fortunate to know some people that might be able to do it. I certainly can't do it. That's for sure. Steve, this is pretty cool. The Bills and the Chiefs, pretty amazing. So it's been an amazing rivalry between the Bills and the Chiefs over the last few years, and more specifically between Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. The Bills have won the last 4 regular season games against the Chiefs, but of course the Chiefs have won the last 4 playoff games, more importantly. You look at those last 3 playoff games, just incredible. I think, 2021 divisional playoff game, the overtime game, right? 42-36, one of the best games we've ever seen. 2023 divisional game, 27-24, you guys beat them. And then, of course, last year's AFC Championship game, 32-29, just another amazing game. Great teams find ways to win. I guess that's how dynasties are established. But 2 incredible quarterbacks, with Josh being named NFL MVP last season. Patrick has won 2 league MVPs and has been named Super Bowl MVP 3 times. Can you give us a quick take on the similarities and differences in these two great quarterbacks?
Yeah, I mean, the first similarity that comes out is these guys are built as elite competitors. Like I mean, I see that in Patrick every day.
Yeah.
And Sean McDermott and I are good friends. He's the head coach of Buffalo, and so in conversations with him, I know how highly competitive Josh is, and I see it firsthand when we go against him all the time. So to me, that's the thing that sticks out. And when you have a guy in that spot, they're both very unselfish guys too. They realize that it takes more than just them. But they're two in this league, and there's other ones that can will their team to win. And listen, the difference between these games has been like that. You just rattled off the score.
Oh,
It's a play here or a play there, and we've been fortunate in the playoff games to just find a way to make one more play. But you know, we love competing against Patrick every day during the year because it makes us better for the things that he does, for what the offense does. And then I've always enjoyed the challenge of going against an elite quarterback. I mean, it's just kind of the game within the game, right? And Josh is one of those guys. What's scary about Josh Allen is how big he is. I mean, he's as big a man as there is out there. I mean, he's bigger than some of the D linemen. And so when
is he about 6'5"?
yeah, oh, yeah, he's all of that, but he's thick.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
thick. And, when he played at Wyoming, I remember I wasn't evaluating quarterbacks; I was evaluating defensive players. But in some crossover games, I remember watching him at Wyoming, and the weather never bothered him. Right? He always hung in there big. I mean, he was physical. He ran it. He knew when to get down and not get hurt, and he knew when to run it and when it was a key situation. And he's still doing it now. I think when he first came in the league, he had the learning curve like every quarterback, right, in that first year. But it didn't take him long. And he's elite. Sean does a great job up there with that team, and they're going to be in the thick of it every year.
Yeah. It's as you said, I mean, these games literally have come down to one play. What's it like for you on the sidelines, right? I mean, we know what it's like for a fan. We know what it's like for a family member. I mean, you're right in the center of it. You're caught up in it. But I mean, it's got to be the intensity level is just got to be immense, right? I mean, like you said, one play is probably going to determine, who's moving on to the Super Bowl or the AFC Championship. I mean, what's it like for you on the sideline?
Well, listen, the bullets are flying on an NFL sideline every game. I can tell you that right now. It's intense, but my take on it in every game, like I'm never relaxed. It doesn't matter what the score is. A guy like Josh Allen, if we happen, it's never happened, but if we were ahead by 3 scores, I still wouldn't be relaxed because in 3 plays he can probably get his team back into it. But it's exciting to be a part of, and you got to be on point as the game gets closer and closer to the certainly into the fourth quarter, and that clock's ticking, and we got to get the ball back to Patrick. We can't afford to give up a field goal here because so all that's going through your mind. But it does all of those games. We can go through the ones that we've won, and we can go through the ones that we haven't, and say usually you can pick out 3 plays in a game that will change the whole outcome. But that's how close this league is.
Yeah, yeah. One more quick one on this. So Patrick Mahomes is now in second place in terms of most playoff wins by a quarterback with 17. And of course, Tom Brady's number one with 35. I mean, just amazing.
Yes.
You've had some great looks at Tom over the course of your career, including 2 Super Bowls. I mean, is he the best ever?
Yeah, listen, I'm a big Tom Brady fan, and have had some great battles with him. I've gotten to know him recently pretty well in some conversations. I just think he's got a terrific football mind. I mean, he's involved with the Raiders now, and I think that's going to help that organization. Yeah, when we had those games against that he was perfect in the system they had him in. He's elite. You talk about competitor now. That's as elite competitor as you get. And he's intense on the field during the game too. He did it differently maybe than Josh and Patrick do it, but every bit as effective. But I just think the way he operated in that offense, he made everybody else around him better. I mean, he had different receivers, different offensive linemen, different running backs, but because he was the staple in the middle, and he knew, I mean, from the chin to the hairline, Chris, he's as intelligent a football player has ever been out there. And that's what was really neat in going against Tom, was figuring out a way to beat him, with scheme, because he's going to know exactly what you've done, everything prior. He's one of those guys that's going to know exactly the look. We talked a little bit about recently, a couple months ago, we talked a little bit about, we played Super Bowl 55. We played in Tampa. It was the COVID year that the Chiefs played Tom's Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they beat us. And him and I had a long discussion. He said he studied hard where our safeties were, and he had it down. He had it in the conversation. I'm like, you son of a gun, you had it, and it made a difference in the game. But yeah, listen, all those wins, all those. How could he not be right now, at the top of that list, right?
Yeah, and you've been around it for so long, you're probably somewhat used to it. So, growing up playing basketball, I probably had a couple teammates that went on and played in the NBA. I mean, we're really good players, good athletes. But I think as I've kind of moved on and met some other people who, played professional sports, I'm pretty taken with how competitive these guys are. You're seeing, I'm sure the Mahomes and the Bradys. I mean, you must see a competitive level that people couldn't even dream about.
Chris, it's funny you bring that up. I'm smiling because these guys, they're competitive at, the stories about Michael Jordan, and he would be betting on when the luggage was, whose luggage was going to come out first, right, on the carousel. But they compete at everything. It could be ping pong. I mean, they play cards, whatever it is. Hey, I can hit that trash barrel. I bet you I can hit that, and you can't. I mean, it's all the time. But the great ones are built that way. I mean, anybody that shies away from competition is probably not making it in basketball or football to that level, just because it takes that kind of competitor to compete at this level. So, but I love watching these. They compete I call them conversations, arguments, whatever you want. It's the Michael Jordan versus LeBron James. Like there's all, and it's boom, boom, and they don't give up, man. Those guys go at it. It's great to see when they get in our building and they're behind, those walls. They're just kids again, right? Enjoying each other's company and being competitive.
That's at the end of the day, it is still a game, right?
Yeah.
That's what's great about sports. Yeah. Steve, let me see if I can get you to talk about this one a little bit. You have a great reputation as a player's coach. Your players historically have really enjoyed playing for you. We saw Chiefs players recently wearing "In Spags We Trust" T-shirts. I love
I
it.
tried to
So
burn
cool.
all those shirts, but I couldn't get them all.
I was trying to see if I could get a hold of one for the interview. I couldn't track one down. You must have burned them
I
all.
got them all burned. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What is it about your coaching style that is so endearing to the players besides your wife Maria's cooking?
Well, that's the key. I can't take that out. I mean, that's we go right to the stomach, right? I mean, all men want to eat. Listen, this is twofold. That's a two-way street that we're talking about, because it's I mean, I've just always believed that the coaching was teaching, and teaching was relationships, and you got to establish that before you can do anything. My mother was a teacher, so I think there was a foundation there. I do believe in people, and so you try to invest in them, and I think that kind of generates a relationship. I think you have to work at that. I don't think it's I've never seen coaching as a dictator thing. I mean, I've just seen it as working together, especially at the pro level. Um, that's first and foremost. And I do know this about players, and I think this is probably true about all professional players. If they know down deep, or if you prove to them that you can help them at what they're doing, then I think you'll get their ear, you'll get their respect, and I think it works. But Maria and I always like to take it a little bit further, because there's more to this than just a game. I do think there's still young men, right? I mean, we're talking about guys that are 21 to early 30s, and they grow into men, and we see that if we have them for a long period of time. But being a good example to these young guys and helping them later in life, because a lot of these guys, this is a short career, and they've got to do something afterwards, and everybody needs to be successful at something. So if you can help them in some ways, just establish some of the key ingredients that you need, so to speak, to be successful in anything, I think that's huge for us. I always love, nothing makes me feel better. I've got my phone in my hand right here, Chris, than when I pick it up and there's a text from a player that maybe I coached 10 years ago or 15 years ago or whatever it is. And it might be something simply, Coach, I remember when you gave me this book, or I remember when you said this, or I'm doing this now because, we did it back in whatever. And that's as gratifying as anything. So that part of it's really important to us.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's such a credit to you. It's a business. It's a big time business. There's a lot of money at stake. But to be able to find that line where you got your players focused and you can still have a good relationship with them, that's a talent. And obviously, that's evolved with you. But I think right from early on, you always had a great relationship with the players, and I can
Chris,
understand
just
why.
while you're on that, one of the things that I do think always gets lost, like the quarterback gets a lot of credit, the head coach gets a lot of credit, the defensive coordinator gets a lot of credit. But listen, I grew up in this profession, pounded it, and being an assistant coach, and the assistant coaches that I've been able to have, certainly in Kansas City and New York, have been the most important part of it. I mean, I get to talk about it, but the effort and the grind that they go through, if you don't have that, no coordinator is ever going to be any good. Because you got to have people, because I can't talk to all the groups all the time, right? We're splitting into different positions. And I think our guys do a good a job as anybody. And they're really good at the relationship part of it too. So I think a lot of credit needs to go to assistant coaches around the league too.
Yeah, well, I know a lot of the teams are, not big fans of bringing cameras in, but definitely one of the more interesting aspects of Hard Knocks, right, is for
Yeah.
people to get a look at all the breakdowns, right, and the specific coaches, and they have their groups and all the subgroups. I mean, I don't think people really had an idea, that things went down to that level with the
Yeah.
assistant coaches. That's really been pretty cool to see all that.
No, and I don't think they get enough credit. I think, we were talking earlier, Chris, about head up coaching opportunities I had throughout this past year. I think our assistant coach, like we got a bunch of guys on our staff that should be defensive coordinators now. But because we go, we've been blessed to go as long as we have, those jobs are all gone by the time we finish. But my hope is, like, one of the things that you do when you get to this point in your career where I'm at, is I hope that I'm helping some of these other guys on that same path, and that's important to me. And I'd like to see that happen. And because of now, some guys have gone on and gotten a couple of jobs here and there, but I think that will happen more and more. That doesn't mean, Chris, I want to get beat in the first round of the playoffs. So we want to keep on winning, but I wish some of these guys would get a little bit more opportunities.
Yeah, I get you. Steve, no assistant coach has ever been inducted into the Hall of Fame. There are a lot of people who think that based on what you've accomplished as a coordinator, that you deserve to be and will be a Hall of Famer. I know that you're very modest, and I'm not going to ask for your opinion or thoughts on this, and I apologize even for bringing it up. However, I was fortunate to be able to touch base with a couple of my former interview guests who are both Hall of Fame broadcasters and the top NFL announcers in the game today. CBS's Jim Nantz, ESPN's Joe Buck. I can tell you that you've got two strong believers who think you are very, very deserving of that honor and are so impressed with your accomplishments. Both are big fans. Obviously, your story is not complete. You've got a ways to go coaching, but I'm not going to ask you to comment on that, but I think it is something that's really interesting about your story. To be the first coordinator potentially into the Hall of Fame, and there's a lot
Very
of people
humbling.
think it's well deserved.
It's humbling that you would say that. Those two guys, I think, are terrific in their own right. But I appreciate you mentioning it. We'll kind of. I don't want to be done yet, so we don't talk about those things.
Long ways to go, without a doubt. I mean, you keep yourself in great shape. 65. You got a lot of years left in you for sure.
God willing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve, I'll get you moving here. Let me finish up with a quick one on this. And,
Sure.
this is really funny. You do not have to comment on this if you don't want, but Andy Reid has been great in TV commercials, right? The Snickers commercial and the State Farm ads, and you know where I'm going with this. The Bundlerooski commercial is absolutely awesome. I mean, so great to see him do that. He's your boss. You don't have to comment, but any thoughts for us on Bundlerooski?
No, listen, I just think listen, for the longest, Andy's been a head coach in the league for 25 years or something. And so, he's had opportunities to do these things before. What I really like about it, Chris, is people are seeing the personality that I see all the time. I mean, Andy and I are really close. We've known each other for 30 some odd years and same age and the whole thing. And so we get behind those doors and we're like kids talking about things. But I just think it's so neat. I think he'd have to ask him, but I think it's Patrick that talked him into, hey, look, you got to do this, coach, right? And to see that's it. He's got a personality that a lot of people don't see because the game of football's so serious and it's the press conferences and all that. But Andy is a funny man. He's the greatest person in the world, and for him to come up with the way he did it, Maria and I watch it, when it comes on. I just laugh. I think it's great. I think it's great what he's doing.
Mahomes' reaction in that commercial was awesome. But I think the first couple times I saw it, I'm like, is he really saying that? You thought maybe it was like computer
Yes.
generated or
Yeah.
something, but was all Andy. And I'm sure the players must absolutely love it,
Yeah.
right? Oh, they must go crazy watching.
Travis Kelce will be in the middle of a meeting and he might blurt it out, when Andy's up there. But we have fun with it, and that's the good part of football when you can have fun with those things. But
Yeah.
I'm glad he's done it. He's a terrific maker. Like I say, people see the personality that I see all the time.
Yeah. No, I think Andy's a couple years older than you. He's got you think a few years left there?
He's like a year. I think he's a year ahead. You talk about Andy, how long Andy will go, you think?
Yeah, yeah.
I tell you what, if I'm Andy, I go as long as Patrick Mahomes is there, right? I mean, Patrick Mahomes makes us all younger. That's what it is. Him and the rest of the guys there, they make Andy and I feel a lot younger.
I get it would be pretty tough to leave with Patrick still behind the center there for sure. Yeah. Steve, so great to be able to spend some time with you today. I wish you all the best continuing the amazing Kansas City dynasty run and suspect we'll see you at some point in the near term leading your own NFL team. I know that you and your wife, Maria, do a ton of charitable work. That's so nice. Thank you so much for joining me today on Questions for Cancer Research. It's been a lot of fun.
Pleasure to do it, Chris. And listen, just a shout out to you for doing these to obviously raise money for cancer. I think it's great. I look forward to getting to know you a little bit better when we can get together down the road here in Fort Lauderdale. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, awesome to know you're going to be down here in South Florida. That's great. We really look forward to it. And thank you so much.
You got it, Chris. My pleasure.